Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loudoun Agile Network. This is LAN's sixth anniversary, and we are super excited. We've hit our 2,300 number just as we started our sixth year. This is also a very special event today because this is our first event with Agile. So it was Loudoun Agile Network. And we decided to evolve the community and help us grow and deliver with extra muscle from AI. So we became Loudoun Agile Network, and this is our first event as Loudoun Agile Network. And we are super excited to have an amazing speaker with us today, Jordan Ploner. I met him in an AI conference last year, and as I listened to him speak, I was like mesmerized with the immense knowledge that he brings and real world expertise. So I was super impressed, and I'm like, I have to have Jordan come and speak at LAN. So I'm super excited that he's here today. The topic for today is making AI human, and how do we make meaning and purpose in the age of AI. So Jordan, before he started his own venture, which is Pacific AI Advisory, he was a global director of AI strategy at Intel. He is a keynote speaker in many AI conferences. I can go on, but I want to give the mic to Jordan so he can focus on the presentation for today. Jordan, welcome to LAN. We are super excited to have you. Thank you for
Uh,
joining us.
yeah, thank you, Toby, and good evening, everybody. It's a late afternoon here for me in Portland, Oregon. As Toby says, I'm a founder of Pacific AI Advisory. My core belief is that AI should not make your business more generic. It should reveal and amplify what makes you unique by creating space for organizations and people to think slower, deeper, and more originally. And I see AI as a layer in solutions that can coordinate incredibly complex markets, but only with intentional design. Without intentional design, AI just amplifies generic patterns and creates organizational sameness. So I work as an embedded AI executive, helping organizations move beyond hype to people-centered solutions. I guide organizations and teams through vision, strategy, culture, and execution, where AI enhances human potential and drives measurable results, not just worshiping the idea of speed and efficiency. Keynotes and workshops are also things I do, like today. But my core business is being an embedded AI executive with my clients. So the goal today is to deliver an alternative to the deterministic, sort of tech deterministic, hype-driven narrative that we're all getting in the sort of press, especially if you're on LinkedIn and in other places where you're reading about AI. It's sort of all about the technology and how equating the technology with human intelligence. And instead of diving deeper into the technology today, I want to have conversations beyond the algorithm and help us evolve from consumers of AI to greater consciousness of how we can adapt and use AI as individuals and as organizations. And also, we'll talk about leadership today for those people who are individuals and also leaders in organizations. I want to start off by saying companies do not need an AI strategy. There is no such thing as an AI strategy. AI is a tool and a performance engine, and performance and speed are not strategies. Okay. But companies do need a strategy for the conditions that AI is and will be creating to shift the work people do and the role that the organization occupies in their particular industry or segment. So, how do we tell this alternative narrative? We're going to tell it in four parts. Okay, we're going to start talking about empowerment. Explain AI in a way that allows you to not be distracted by the noise or disempowered by the false claims of AI and have clarity and confidence on what AI can and cannot do. Talk about inner loop. the mastery, the agency you need to have to master and adopt AI correctly to serve your needs and avoid losing trust in your organization, losing your culture or your organization's culture, and falling to the challenges of the sameness and losing what makes you distinct and unique as an organization, or even as an individual worker and your voice. The outer loop. Talk about the purpose of an organization. How can we create a kind of a business AI technology interlock so AI both frees time but also enables addressing complex challenges with new kinds of system-wide solutions that are partially driven by AI. So we want to ask, by using AI, how can we connect more deeply with our organization's purpose? Every organization, profit, nonprofit, government has a mission and a purpose. And we want to, as individuals and employees, connect this, and as leaders, connect as deeply to that purpose as possible. And finally, purpose and meaning, identity. In a world in which skills are increasingly becoming commoditized, say software programming, we want to consider identity and ask the question, is your own personal identity too much tied up with the skills and tasks that you excel at, right? And maybe if you're a leader, is your identity too tied up to the budget that you have and the number of team members you manage? And how do we get back to being more you and clarifying your identity? And part of this requires really great leadership. And the principles of that leadership have never changed, right? We may have lost sight of it as we've migrated to managing dashboards. But when we think about what dashboards manage, they manage the tedious, repetitive tasks that our staffs are doing. If AI is increasingly going to be doing those tedious, repetitive tasks, then are we managing AIs through our dashboard? What happens to managing people? So we need to get back and manage people and the most human elements of people. And it starts with a vision of what are we going to do with the productivity gains that we get in our organizations by using AI, and ultimately requires leaders and coaches and mentors to help our employees and ourselves become more human. So today's real opportunity with AI is not replacement, but renewal to augment, elevate, and transform jobs and organizations. Also renewal of leadership to help people focus on purpose. Okay, so let's start this new narrative by talking about how to think about AI. It's been 1,134 days since ChatGPT has been released. I always find this interesting to talk about because there definitely feels like this before G and after G kind of moment, right, of ChatGPT. And we've been in this now 3-year collective moment of embrace with a thinking machine. And it creates this tremendous amount of unease. There's a flood of commentary, both pushing AI hype and also pushing AI doom. And I think a lot of those articles that I read really reflect the personal biases of the writer, and I'm not sure they're all that illuminating. So we, as people here, have to start by asking, what is AI for? And it's helpful to think of both AI in a sense of continuity and AI as a mirror, in that it reflects the human imperative that goes back 100,000 years prior to recorded history, where humans develop tools to free us from dangerous work, to help us sustain ourselves. And as we develop our tools, we expand human capacity and human capability. But there is something still unique about AI that I think is more like a rupture, where we take this idea of an integrated mind and we kind of disaggregate it into separate functions. And some aspects of our intelligence appears is being externalized by AI. So it kind of focuses this really kind of existential reflection. What is essential in human cognition and creativity, and what is something that can be automated? And asks us some challenging questions like, can intelligence exist without consciousness, without embodied physical experience? I think the best way to frame this is to think about this as a signal, an opportunity, and a choice. The signal is this unease that I've just talked about. Even though we can say this continuity in terms of AI as a tool, it absolutely has an element of unease. And then the opportunity is to ask, what is AI for? And to ask this question is not about the value of productivity and to worship efficiency. To ask what AI is for is actually to ask what humans are for and what changes we want in our society, and what makes us uniquely human about the nature of intelligence, agency, and human purpose. And we should even ask a fundamental question about why, why computer intelligence should be even modeled after human intelligence at all. Human intelligence is a byproduct of millions of years of evolution, if not billions, going back to the earliest creatures and cellular structures on our planet. Why would we want to recreate that in in computer form? There are different kinds of intelligence that we can create. And then back to thinking about signal, opportunity, and choice. The choice is using technology to elevate human purpose, not just efficiency in a race to the bottom of sameness. And we cannot shrink your way to greatness. So this idea of replacing people and shrinking organizations will make organizations smaller, not greater. And instead of asking how close to human intelligence is artificial intelligence on a benchmark, we should simply ask, what can AI do? And what does AI break? And how is AI effective? So in my own job, I become part therapist and part captain. I give executives the choice to lead by giving them a narrative that helps them or that empowers them, and also give them the journey and the roadmap. And while the concerns about job loss are absolutely real, I do think it's a little bit of a distraction from something far more disruptive about AI and jobs that I will talk about later. And while not a conversation about technology today, I think for non-tech people, I'm assuming there's a handful of people maybe who are not technology affiliated on this call, or at least some who maybe don't know a lot about AI. I think it is important to understand the most basic elements of what a large language model is, or in this case, GPT. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's the G, generative, is because it can create or generate new content, not just analyze and classify, which is the way machine learning and classical analytics works. And the important thing about this ability is that it can look at the messy data in our lives. When we think about how the whole world has been digitized, much of that data is what we call unstructured. And GPTs can look at all this unstructured data and content and actually, consume it and organize it. And it has this great ability to take different types of data and work together with them. So it kind of acts as a translation and integration capability where you can take, spreadsheets and Word documents and code and tables and actually work with all of them together. And there's not really other tools that can do that. The P stands for pre-trained. It's been trained in advance on the worldwide digital knowledge that we have, at least the public knowledge that we have. But pre-trained also implies that things can be retrained, right? So we can retrain, tune, or fine tune all these pre-trained models with our own personal data. A lot of knowledge in our world is actually hidden practical knowledge that's not in structured databases or in public information. It's actually in our emails, in our PowerPoint presentations, in our Word documents. So a lot of the value of GPTs come from actually retraining them or tuning them, not using them out of the box, but actually using them on our buried practical knowledge. And transformer. So transformer is a type of neural net design um, that understands relationships and context and language. And it uses something called an intention mechanism that allows it to focus on the most important words in a sentence or in a paragraph and actually kind of build relationships between those words to understand, or at least statistically try to understand what you're trying to find or look for. And as you can see with the sort of under the transformer word, you can see the bell curve there. And this is a very important understanding if you want to think about whether AI is intelligent or quote unquote thinking. What these transformers are doing is looking at the words you're using in a query or any type of input, and they're just doing pattern matching. They're simulating thinking by simply predicting what the next word should be or what the next word you're looking for by the relationships between all the words in its data set. And it's building a bell curve. And what's giving you an answer, it's not giving you the answer, it's giving you the most probabilistic answer standardized to a mean. Okay. And if you've ever used different chatbots or maybe slightly changed your query, you would see that these answers are endless. They're non-deterministic. You will get a different answer every time you query a machine, or even change your query a little bit, or query two different chatbots. Okay, very different from traditional IT tools. Um, Now, this non-determinism is actually kind of also its strength because it's able to look at ambiguous data and actually give you sort of statistical outputs based on some very ambiguous data and the kinds of questions you're asking, like where should I eat tonight, or what's the best restaurant in my city? Those are not really statistically, there's no real right answer in those kinds of questions. So part of the weakness of these models is also its strength. But I want to warn each of us to not be seduced by the fluency of large language models. Humans have evolved to develop trust with other human beings through language. So when we see a machine being fluent in our language, we actually have a tendency to trust it, right? And so I want to warn everybody that fluency does not equal reasoning. The confidence of these models don't equal competence. So if the output it gives you is very confident, it doesn't mean it's correct. It just means it's confident. I think we all have people in our lives who sound very, very confident, but we would never say they're competent, right? And we should never confuse language with intelligence, though I think historically we would have confused language with intelligence or equated the two. I think now that we see language embodied in these machines, we realize that language itself is not intelligence. But I want to say also that proponents of AI hype uh, exaggerate AI by kind of presenting a definition of human intelligence that's narrow to what AI can do. So they look at these chatbots and they say, look what these chatbots can do. This equals human intelligence, and it clearly does not, right? But I also think that the critics of AI downplay the value of pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is a core part of human intelligence. It's fundamental, and especially with evolution, of how a low power brain uses pattern matching and intuition to make millions of decisions throughout their week. Okay, so pattern recognition is an incredibly important part of human intelligence, but it's not all of human intelligence. But I'd like to move beyond these binary debates and see AI simply as a powerful cognition tool, okay, that can translate and integrate different data sets, especially messy data sets, and deliver system-wide orchestration, which I'll talk about more. Okay. And I want to also say that we're not victims. There's lots of things that concern people have about AI, but I think two things are true. Intelligence is not just a product of our biology. We don't actually know the peak of human intelligence. As we always develop new tools, we find out that our human intelligence is actually a product of our technology. Our technology allows us to reach higher and higher levels of intelligence. But I should also say that technology is not deterministic. We have agency to shape technology and not just react to it. I've been involved 30 years in developing and delivering technology solutions and watching my peers do the same. I can guarantee you that no technology has ever been used by the way a product manager or an engineer has ever envisioned it. Okay? Because people get to shape the technology. So to me, the question is not, can AI think like us? But I think it's how AI changes the way we think, decide, and coordinate. And we're free to imagine what meaningful work looks like and focus on uniquely human aspects of life, cultivating wisdom, creativity, nurturing relationships, collaborating to create new things, and so on. But let me give you some more context and challenges about generative AI. On the left, we have sort of traditional AI methods, both machine learning and predictive AI, which is a subset of overall AI under the umbrella of AI and AI techniques that preceded generative AI. And they exhibit a more reactive approach using the knowledge bases we have, all the images and all the other unstructured data. So machine learning and predictive AI was still leaving the majority of the world's digital data untouched and unanalyzed. Can't personalize, you can't deal with repetitive tasks with variation in edge cases, you can't generate new content. Generative AI and agents on the right can do these things, but one of the challenges is that it's non-deterministic, right? Which is just a fancy way of saying that it has no right answers. It has endless right answers. While on the left, you'll get one best answer. The answer might be wrong, but if you run that analysis 100 times, you'll get the same wrong answer 100 times. But with generative AI, you'll get a different answer or a different tone of the answer every time. But as I mentioned, this non-determinism is also its strength. In a sense, you could think of machine learning as is data, And predictive AI is senses, and generative AI is of the mind. And at this point, I would maybe someone would might typically show you what AI is good for and what it's not good for. Focus on automation and efficiency. AI is good at generating content. It's not good at generating anything novel or new. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about or to kind of dispel these ideas around automation and efficiency. When one connects systems with AI and agentic AI, which I won't spend a lot of time talking about those different things, so hopefully people here generally understand the differences between generative AI and agentic AI. But whatever AI is put in, that system is amplified, right? Because now you're saying something that humans can do only so fast or only so often or only during working hours, and AI can do millions of times instantaneously and very productively. But it can also amplify mistakes millions of times. And AI doesn't fix dysfunctionality. If you have a system that is dysfunctional, a culture that is dysfunctional, right? It scales that chaos, for example. It doesn't fix it. There's nothing about AI and its performance capabilities that fixes dysfunctionality. Okay. So, for example, I mentioned this non-determinism. Most of our IT tools we depend on, when we hit send on an Outlook email or a Gmail, we expect it to send every single time. We never go back and look, did the email actually send? So that's a deterministic tool. So now we have to deal with a non-deterministic tool where it's always slightly shifting. Issues of timeliness. If we're using large language models in a way to generate, insight and information, uh, they can get stale because if they're not in a certain situation where they're always being updated, we could actually be basing our operations on old information. And as we go through today's presentation, imagine people who don't understand AI and the organizational risk we have by giving AI to everybody and allowing individuals to just sort of put AI out there and what kind of organizational risk they consider, they generate. So we need to reconsider the value of the process before we add AI into it. And as a business leader, you can see how complicated of a technology tool this is. And it requires a change of mindset, right? It's not just to, roll out the new Salesforce, CRM system or the new ERP system and just train people how to use it. It's much more of a mindset than other IT tools. And putting it in everyone's hands can be very destructive. So, okay. So you might say, all right, there's some risks. I see these. Well, we have an IT department. We can manage those, right? And get all those efficient gains that everyone keeps talking about. And maybe we'll slow our hiring. Maybe if we don't lay people off, we can slow our hiring. So, well, great. So, of course, there's risks with all IT tools. So we'll just handle those risks, or I'll have the IT department take care of those risks. Well, I discussed this automation. Now let's talk about efficiency, because you're saying we're going to manage all these risks, right? The efficiency idea, the one that's pushed by every single AI company, is this kind of do AI, we need an AI strategy, dead end approach. There's no sustainable advantage for an organization using the same tools in the same way in the same existing system. You'll get the same incremental gains as everyone else. You're going to risk sameness and losing trust in what makes your organization unique. And you'll lose trust with workers and customers. And in my experience, even the hoped efficiency is sometimes lost and is counterproductive because as AI magnifies whatever system you want to put it in, it actually creates new bottlenecks and creates a lot of unevenness in the system because AI tends to be very specialized. So when we put a lot of specialized AI in the systems, this kind of increases fragmentation of that system and now increases the need for more coordination or not less. Otherwise, the system will fail. And the reason for this view is this kind of very task centric view of thinking about jobs, that jobs are simply made up of tasks in which AI is a tool that can just automate a given task. Well, if jobs equal tasks and AI equals tasks, then we'll just automate jobs away. And this is kind of a contradiction that AI is this kind of transformative human intelligence, amazing magical tool. Yet the framing of task and tools is about performance, not outcomes. This kind of goes back to this dichotomy between AI in a very unimaginative way in one sense, but also being a fantasy and a myth in another sense. And so I like to ask not what can AI do or how intelligent it is, but what does AI break in a system? And we need to take a systems view of AI, not a dead-end performance view. The left is sort of how most organizations are structured today. There's lots of practical knowledge, siloed into different organizations and different teams, and lots of human glue to keep it together. The larger the corporation, the more human glue you need, right? That's what creates a lot of overhead and bureaucracy in large companies. And this task-centric view assumes that we'll get increased performance of individuals and, and, and through automation, but the structure remains unchanged. But those tasks have meaning not of themselves, but they're only in this, but only within the system they work. And in this sort of midsection where we have AI that's sensing, modeling, reasoning, acting, and learning, it unbundles the expertise by extracting all that practical knowledge out of people and rebundling it into performance tools. And this breaks the system, right? And on the right side, we have abundant knowledge. Abundant knowledge is no longer the scarcity. And now what happens is we have to move to managing the system, right? Because AI is translating all these data sets together and all this implied knowledge and tacit knowledge. It's and acting as a coordination engine, and it's creating new constraints, right? And so tools amplify performance, but solutions actually handle risk, accessibility, usability, reliability, outcomes. So the true power in AI isn't doing existing tasks faster. It's changing how value, power, and work is organized. And this creates four issues. It changes the basis of competition and how economic value is created. And even if you don't want to change the way you operate, someone else in your industry will. Um, and bigger than the risk of automation and job loss, which we talked about or referred to earlier, is actually each of us being anchored to a task whose economic value has moved elsewhere. So I'm less concerned about job loss than actually people being in jobs that no longer have the economic value. Think of a taxi driver after they created Uber, right? So the taxi drivers still are employed, but they've lost their economic value because it was extracted out by this coordinating and orchestrating platform. They didn't have to, their skill set of knowing how to get places faster or where to find fares was taken out of them and extracted out of them and put into this tool. And the tool actually learned from the drivers all this information. So the drivers actually sowed the seed of their own loss of economic value. Not to say they had a choice in it. Okay. So the power of AI isn't in automating tasks. It's just orchestration and coordinating systems, and doing things that we cannot do at the human level. Okay. But I want to emphasize that this leads to new opportunities and an effort to move closer to our mission and purpose. Um, So if this is a system-wide disruption or an industry-wide disruption that we can expect in the next 5 or 10 years, how do we prepare for it? This is where AI's unique attributes as an endless answering pattern matching machine for cognition and systems comes into play. And that this is not an IT project, and that people must evolve before orgs can. So I frame this as an inner loop of people and practice, how people change and develop and become different kinds of workers, and an outer loop, how systems change and how we redesign systems and organizations in an AI world, and how we re-architect, reshape organizations, and address the new market dynamics or even predict the new market dynamics that will emerge in the rules. And the goal is above AI, meaning the goal is not to use AI, the goal is to get towards more meaningful human work. Uh, uh, the result of aligning both loops is that routine, low purpose tasks are automated, and higher purpose human capabilities and org goals are amplified. So let's talk about this inner loop and managing personal practice. So as people use AI, they aren't just automating tasks. They're redesigning their own jobs and moving from routine repetitive work towards higher order, more uniquely human work. And this follows a path starting from today with mindset. And as I mentioned a little bit before, your identity is not your skills. And while people talk about job loss, I think a larger concern that I have about AI that will affect more people than just people who might lose their jobs is people losing their identity as their skills are automated. So We have to move from how do I save my job with AI to what if AI, to thinking about what if AI changes how work is organized, right? We don't want to be a victim. We want to be a designer of our new work. Okay. Um, so when your identity is with a personal purpose in your organization's mission, then as the work changes and the tasks matter less or the tasks changes, you can more easily navigate and evolve with your tools and as the system changes. I think this is a unique challenge for people in their 20s coming out of college. And I think this is a challenge also for people in their 40s and 50s whose identities have already been really formed by the work they've done over the previous few decades. And then you often hear people say AI won't put you out of jobs. People who use AI will. This is wrong, actually. I think this is a very false saying. We must recognize that the system itself will change, and we may not lose our jobs, but we may lose the economic value of the work we do. So where do we start? I like to say that AI can make us duller through passive engagement. And again, I'm focusing here on individual usage, or AI can make us smarter through active engagement. Okay, so we can go from, simple ad hoc QA questions and just take the answers to really thoughtful iterative discussion. So people might say, well, okay, that's prompt engineering, right? That's pretty basic. We've been talking about prompt engineering for 3 years. And I think prompt engineering is an important thing. You can go watch 100 videos on YouTube about it. But I want to step back from prompt engineering because I think prompt engineering will evolve as AI changes over time. But I want to set up sort of a different way of thinking about AI. And this is people think AI is an answer machine. Oh, AI will do this for me. I'll ask ChatGPT. It knows. That's backwards. The system doesn't have the answers. It doesn't know anything. It has patterns. What you get back depends on what you send it. The chatbot is you. What you see on the screen is this incredible world model with all the world's information filtered through your intent, your history, how you prompt it, what you're willing to accept as an answer. The way you ask, the way you frame, the examples you give, the depth of your thinking. If you ask shallow questions or smart questions, if you are able to express with clarity your intent, here's what I'm trying to figure out, then you'll get back better answers. So it takes intellectual honesty. Okay. Also, one of the best things about paying for a chatbot or any kind of AI service is it has memory, it has history, and it learns about you over time. I think there's some legitimate concerns about privacy that people have, but I will say in my own career and job, the value of the history and the memory and uploading my documents and kind of creating this digital twin of myself has been incredibly valuable because the machine gets to learn me over time. And increasingly, as I ask questions, it's filtering it through all the knowledge it has of me. And I think one of the biggest challenges for people, and if anyone's a parent out there, I think if you're growing up in this world, one of the biggest challenges of chatbots is having a sense of conviction, because chatbots will give you pros and cons and everything, right? It's sort of wishy-washy. So we need to teach young people, especially, how to have conviction about their relationship to the truth, right? To challenge the answers it gets, to take a stand, but then to understand the downside or the counter opinions of the stand it's taking. But it is each person's job to use AI well. And I'm actually surprised as I talk to people and share examples of how I use AI. Many people are still using it like a Google search engine because they see a prompt window and they go, oh, that's just like Google search, right? And that is, and they're not using it to its full capacity. So to restate, you're not interrogating an alien intelligence. You are shaping the model, and it's your job to be open to being wrong. And I like to think of it this way. Even though I said the chatbot is you, I think about there's you with other people, and these chatbots give you this in-between stage, which is an extension of self, where it doesn't replace talking to other people, doesn't replace thinking for yourself, but it gives you a way to externalize your own thinking before you kind of move out of your own thinking, of your own individual self, and work with other people. So I think of it as an extension of self or a reflection of self. I won't go through all of these, but I like to, again, to build on this idea. It's like of like think chat, right? That you are practicing, reflecting, and planning. And you can upload instructions. Actually, you can write your own instructions and tell the chatbot every time I ask a question, give me three pros and cons, give me alternative areas, expose my biases. You don't even have to query every single time. You could actually give it instructions and say, use these instructions every time I query you, so that you're actually always enforcing the chatbot to give you these kinds of diverse answers and be counterintuitive and make sure that you are not being biased. So how do you get started in your, and I think we'll provide these slides, so I'm sure people might want to take down more notes on this slide. Um, I teach this in more detail in my workshops, to show kind of a 90-day progression from basic tool usages around single tools to build mindset and offload low value work, to multi-tool integration where I'm experimenting with more complex workflows using multiple tools, and improving the quality of important work. And then the third column is agentic AI, maybe working with a cross-functional team between operations and IT, and redesigning work and workflows and experiments. And also, mention that human in the loop accountability. You always want to be human in the loop, accountable for the outputs. Use this internally only first, so that you can get really familiar with what the outputs are and make sure it's meeting you or your organization's um, expectations. And fundamentally, this kind of creates breaks up the divide, or breaks down the divide between technology and business operations. In other words, if you're an entrepreneur, you could actually use AI to create a minimal viable product. If you're a manager or an analyst, you could go create prototypes and dashboards using AI. If you're a designer, you could actually develop a concept for your design. You don't always have to rely on other people to get the first iteration out there. So it actually extends your abilities as a non-tech person into the tech field, or vice versa. Um, People often ask which tool they should use. I think training on tools is fundamentally not very effective because tools are changing all the time. There's lots of YouTube videos on every single tool you could imagine. So, of course, if you like a tool, you can just go to YouTube and get some great ideas. I do that when I discover a new tool. I just go on YouTube and I just see how people are using it. But I think one of my guidelines is it's more important to master a tool than to constantly change tools, because you really want to learn sort of the personality of a tool, and also, as I mentioned, create that library where you're creating, content and a digital twin, so that over time it's learning you. And a lot of people focus on benchmarks about which tools are 5% better. I find that my tools, when I stick with them and get them better, they're 50% better. So I'm sticking with one tool. And if I change tools, then I'm starting all over. Okay. So, I think mastery over change is more important. Okay, so let's talk about outer loop. Trying to stay on time here. And now we're going to transition a little bit away from mindset and literacy and usage as an individual. Of course, an individual can be both in your personal life, but it can also be you as an employee at a company. But I want to talk about now from the organizational standpoint. So I just made this big deal about how this is not about efficiency and productivity, but I just spent a lot of time about individual usage. So let's move on to this outer loop and shaping how we organize and compete. Okay. And this is where AI becomes, a potentially a central nervous system of how organizations work, and what will then be the new rules of an industry. How AI will re-architect, reshape, and restack markets. And while I'm emphasizing the market disruption here, I want to always come back and emphasize that how challenging and complex our business and social challenge problems are, right? And the goal here is not to do AI. I'm excited about how AI it can be used to enable people to solve the most complex human problems on our planet, or be part of solving those problems. I think humans will ultimately solve those problems or address those problems. It's not AI alone. But when I talk about this disruption here, it's really that I'm most excited about. So let's talk about what's holding back AI success. Many of you may be reading many of the surveys. There's a whole bunch of end of year, beginning of the year surveys about the failure rate or success rate of AI. Um, the detail behind the headlines, and I read the reports, they often conflate success and failure with ROI and individual usage with operational AI, and they're very confused, but the headlines are what often get repeated in the popular press. So often the surveys are biased, or maybe they're not even clear what they're trying to do, or they're trying to generate business for the consultants that release them. Okay. So, but I have a lot of experience working with dozens of clients and 15 years in AI tech background. And I do agree with the basic framing here. There's an incredible high failure rate in achieving ROI for many. Statistics or reports say between 50 to 80%. But there's also a tremendous returns for those that have implemented AI correctly. And the reports indicate a 3 to 10x return on successful implementation of AI in terms of return on investment. Okay, so this means that implementing AI, this non-deterministic, endless answering pattern matching machine is really difficult. But not surprisingly, there are outsized returns on successful implementations. So, what are the causes of failure when you read these reports? It turns out, and if any of you are old enough, I see some people with gray hair on this call, some people not even with a lot of hair on this call, and you probably this probably should sound familiar. It's a gap between technology and people. That the tech doesn't fail. The problem is that organizations treated tech like an IT project, not as a business and operations project, right? So you can read the slides, right? That the model worked, but it didn't deliver business value, right? There was not alignment between the business and the IT department when they created this IT solution or AI solution. There was no real preparation to incorporate this into a business process. Oh, the model works, but it's sort of in a silo. And there was no plan to scale it and integrate it with the existing IT system. The value of a model is zero, right? The value of AI comes from by enacting org change and improving operations around AI. AI has no value in of itself. It's useless. Doesn't solve any business problems on its own. It's making a prediction, right? So we've talked about the unique challenge with AI. It's not a five nines highly reliable IT tool, and we've talked about it being an organizational and people challenge. And I want to say that leadership, not IT, is responsible for the failure rates that we're seeing. So, how do we create a strong business tech interlock? In light of these studies, and in my experience, uh, for many executives, doing AI wrong is the biggest threat they feel. Not doing AI, they actually are afraid to do AI. So, it's not just about successful AI adoption with purpose and identity, it's also about leadership moving past AI hesitations. And the essence of a strategy has always been in uncertainty, how to make big, bold moves with small steps and learning as you go. And it is decisions made under uncertainty that will create the enterprise business value. So while many people are being scared off by the risk and the failure rate, those that are not are the ones who are going to get the outsized returns because they're willing to take that risk. As a leader, if you have a supplier or a consultant who tells you they have the playbook and the plan for AI transformation, that's erroneous. It's just not about use cases. Everyone has AI use cases. You can download all kinds of AI use cases online right now, right? Very pretty PowerPoint presentations, right? But that just leads to sameness, non-differentiation, and so on. The most important thing is for top line leaders can do is set the culture for AI adoption. Are we going to lead or follow? Where are we going to start? Are we going to set the learning mindset journey? How are we going to do responsible experimentation and limit the blast radius if we make mistakes? Okay. It's about setting the culture for AI to build capabilities and learning velocity and compound learning. So over 2 years of experimentation, now three with Gen AI, what have we learned? We've learned that this idea of bottoms up, giving Copilot to everybody doesn't make a difference, right? Making every single individual employee 2 to 5% more productive by giving them Copilot so they can send more better written emails has zero impact on the bottom line of a business, right? It's important to build literacy. So not against giving everyone AI. I'm just saying it doesn't bring operational and transformational change, right? If we want operational and transformational change, we need to have a tops down leadership style. And the best practice is a hybrid approach, right? Combine experimentation with guidance, identify use cases, ideate and create literacy, from experimentation to operations and transformation with a leadership vision, right? And measure impact, improve continuously. So we need this tops-down strategy to provide guidance and bottoms-up experimentation to see what works. It's not bottoms-up or tops-down. Okay. So we discussed culture. We discussed the organizational structure or approach. What is next? Next is we don't start with AI. That's like asking, what should I do with a light bulb? Or asking, what should I do with electricity today? As a leader, you would never say, how can I use electricity better today? You start with why. What is the problem, the opportunity, the outcome that we want? And this is part of building a culture of trust and support and overcoming fear. If you can create an AI vision for your organization, that's about growing the organization's capabilities and transforming the organization, then you start getting buy-in from your employees, right? If you talk about efficiency and automation, well, we all know what that means, right? Automation has never been good for employees in the sense of how, some business leaders think, right? You want to be people centric, upskill, right? Have a plan for upskilling and retraining our employees. And our own people development, if you're a leader, our own people development focus needs to move to help the people to move more towards an identity that associates with purpose and collective action. So even though we want to set the business transformation vision, partially enabled by AI, this great transformational vision, there's still an enterprise AI journey we must go on. And even though I mentioned that the productivity and the efficiency of giving everyone a chatbot and making them 10% more efficient in their week is not going to change the bottom line of a corporation, well, how are leaders and employees going to learn about AI? I mean, they need to go through this sort of first stage of productivity and efficiency. But I really want to move towards or have help organizations move to what I call opportunity AI. That's new capabilities, capabilities that we couldn't do without AI, right? On the left, the productivity, sending emails, we can send emails, we can write articles, we can do coding without AI, right? But the new opportunities are things that can be done with AI that we weren't able to do on our own. Okay. And then, of course, on the right side, this human-centered innovation. Humans will always stay ahead of what AI can do. So we want to free up people so they can figure out these new rules of the system, and use creativity and collaboration to grow the business. All right. So the most important thing about AI is what humans can do once they move beyond what AI is capable of. In my own practice, I use the usage framework. Starts with understanding, surveying, aligning, guiding, and evaluating. Um, it's a way to lead a team, through or an organizations, through the steps, right? Building literacy first, assessing the readiness of the organization, communicating that vision that I talked about, and so on. Um, I want to mention, number three, um, actually number four, sorry. I mentioned here, start with a large scale process, build a roadmap, but start narrow with a domain specific team. We want to limit the blast radius of AI, right? We want to use it internally. If you're the CFO or the COO, you're going to be worried about operational risk and financial risk. How much are we spending on AI? Well, you can have this great ambitious plan, but start in the smallest possible unit and the smallest possible spend internally first. Get familiar with it, see what it could do, get buy-in from your employees, and you're limiting the blast radius of AI going wrong, both in terms of trust and financial risk. Okay? So even though I talk about transformation, I start in the smallest possible unit I can with my clients. And then there's the really, tactical steps. I have 4 minutes here, so I'm gonna just not read this whole slide, but there's some real practical ways where you kind of deconstruct your job or your team's jobs into granular tasks. And I want to point out a few things here that are really important. That on number four, you absolutely want to tie the model's prediction. What is the model doing? Say output, could be code, could be forecasting, could be content generation with operations. If the model is outputting something like this, 10x, 20x more than it used to, how's that changing our operations? We should be able to tie business goals to the model. The model itself doesn't actually achieve the business goal, but we should be able to tie the two, right? As I mentioned before, number five, if you've used AI and you haven't evolved the role of the team, then the ROI of AI is negative. Why? Because you're spending on AI and you're having 20 people on the team do the same thing they were doing before. You've not changed their goals, you've not increased their metrics, you've not increased whatever, however you're measuring that team. If you're measuring the team the same way as you did before AI, after AI, then where's the ROI? You're just generating more input into whatever decisions are being made. So it's really important that evolving the role of the team is one of the outputs or outcomes of using AI. It doesn't happen first because we want to go through all that learning, all that literacy, all that human accountability before we change. Okay, I'm going to finish up here and talk about, the new work, right? So extreme coordination and orchestration is the real intelligence of AI. In fact, I would say that's not really anything about human intelligence because humans have a hard time dealing with extreme complexity. And things like orchestration and coordination is a 24/7 effort. Like again, think of Google, Google Maps or Uber, right? No human could do what those tools are doing. I'm just giving those as real world examples. So in a sense, we're not talking about replacing human intelligence. We're talking about a whole different type of intelligence. Okay. But the challenge is how work is organized when we unbundle and rebundle knowledge and tasks, right? It disrupts employee and industry-wide economic value. It increases the need for coordination in a fragmented market uh, because you have all these different AIs working. AI also lowers the cost of coordination. But for workers, it's not a binary machine versus people. But if the system or that AI will replace your job, it is that your job might still exist in a current system, but the value that system puts on your job might be lower. Right? So one of the questions I like to ask is, are you above the algorithm or below the algorithm? I would say like an Uber driver is below the algorithm. They're just a slave to the algorithm, right? A worker at an Amazon warehouse is below the algorithm, right? So, but we're knowledge workers, most of us on this call, and actually AI is coming for us, so to speak, right? We could look at warehouse workers and think, well, I went to school, I have three masters, that's not me, but it's moving towards us. And so we need to think about staying above the algorithm around the place of orchestration and coordination in really complex markets and how we be part of that as opposed to be letting ourselves be put below the algorithms. Okay. So there's coordination and orchestration opportunities that will emerge to handle the new constraints because constraints don't go away, they just move around, and to apply judgment and manage risk of these new markets, right? And the global opportunity beyond orgs and individuals is for people to be more human and orgs to move closer to mission and purpose. So finishing up here, this is just kind of reviews where we were. We reframed AI, shifting the mental model from automation to coordination. Uh, by the way, you're still going to hear all these AI companies still talk about automation. I just think it's a boring topic. I think efficiency is a dead end. It's a one-time jump. And I don't think that's going to transform organizations or create competitive advantage for any companies or solve real problems. Two, we talked about these two parallel loops, inner and outer. And we talked about kind of aiming for transcendence, using the productivity gains from AI for new human work and new organizational value. And I'm going to end here. We're not talking about a perfect AI strategy. I already said there's no such thing as an AI strategy. We're not talking about perfect AI plans. What I walked through was a plan for compounded learning, not for here's everything you need to know day one. And it doesn't come from a consultant, it comes from within organizations. Okay. And perfect automation also does not exist. We're talking about using this AI moment as a catalyst for purpose and meaningful outcomes. And this is for people who know, this is a Maslow's hierarchy, which is just one way of talking about human purpose. It's not the only way. It's a very Western centric view, actually, of talking about human purpose. But I think it's for today's purposes, it works. And look at where IT or AI fits, the bottom row. Select the right IT tools and establish governance and human in the loop. AI is the very bottom of human existence and of meaning, right? We all want to be working in organizations where we have, safety, right? So that's where the leadership vision comes to make employees safe. We all want love and belonging, which means eliminating busy work, getting us away from the computer and reconnecting with each other. We all want self-actualization. We spend more time at work in our lives than we do anywhere else, including with our families or our spouses. So we really want to outwork, self-actualize, and solve the most complex problems. right? I mean, I know there's a kind of a joke about software developers, but I don't really know. I know a lot of software developers. The number of lines of code they check in every week is not their human purpose, right? They want to release new tools, great user experience, great overall experiences, and um, and delight their customers, right? Internal and external. And so, they also want to be self-actualized by solving the most complex types of software problems in the world. So as you leave this webcast, I ask you to carry this commitment to ask yourself, what future are you going to create to shape AI? Thank you for your time.
Oh, that was fantastic, especially the last slide.
Thank you, Jordan. I invite everyone to ask their questions, put them in the chat, and we'll take them, we'll collect them and read them out. However, before we jump to Q&A, I want to talk about our next presentation coming in February on the 12th, just 2 days away from Valentine's Day. Good way to remember that. And there's a big surprise as to the speaker because nobody here knows him, our own Toby Rao. Thank you, Toby, for making the effort to bring your AI knowledge to us. Looking forward to it. And yeah, I'll put the event in the chat. Please RSVP, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you. All
Yeah,
right,
I also
back
want to
to
say that this is AI is new to land, so this is AI plus Agile. If you have topics that you want to hear presenters present at LAN, please send us a note. We would love to hear your ideas. We are doing this for the community. We are all learning together. So if there are topics, we do have speakers lined up to May, but we definitely want to take your inputs and find the right speakers to present those topics to you. So please do let us know.
okay, thank you. Back to the presentation of the day and to Jordan.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have a lot of questions or any questions. So if anybody wants to unmute yourself and ask your questions, go for it. It's a small group today, so.
I guess I can go with a question that I've had, which is a little tactical. You said about compounding knowledge.
Mhm.
Jordan, what would you advise people who are, involved in agility and transformation for, because this is yet another kind of tool, right, to improve upon that agility.
Mhm.
So what would you recommend?
Recommend in terms of approach or tool? I'm sorry, I missed
No, the
yeah.
compounding of knowledge. What, like more tactically, not just strategically. It's like the strategy is compound knowledge. So
Right,
tactically, thank you.
right. You know, I'm so I mean, I'm assuming for agile computing, I mean, there must be program managers on this call, scrum managers, right? I think it comes back to that personal usage starting first, right? So if you are releasing, weekly reports on program status, if you're collecting information, if you're putting together PRDs and MRDs and or turning bugs into I'm spacing for a moment. When you have a bug, you turn it into a request to engineering to fix the bug. I mean, there are tools now that take written, language on bugs and creates what's that called when you I'm spacing on
A
that
user
one.
story.
No. There's like if you have a bug, you create a request to engineering to fix the bug. There's an acronym for it or something.
A
I'm
Jira
just
ticket.
A Jira ticket. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't remember Jira ticket. I've
No
added
worries.
Intel for 2 years. I guess I'm trying to forget all that stuff. So I would start by using like thinking of your own workflow as a program manager. You're collecting tons of information through emails, other other kinds of dashboards, and it's pulling it all together. I mean, I used to be a program manager. It would take me hours to pull that data together, right, and shape it. And also often different versions. You're sending them out to the team. You're also setting the executive up level one. You don't want to send them all the detail because the executives don't want all the detail. So you have to do another report to the executives, maybe partners and customers, maybe contractors. So I would think about this complex workflow and how much time you're spending compiling information and going, before I have the whole team use AI, how can I use it and be effective with it, right? And then look, because you can't proselytize it if you don't know what it's good for and what it's not good for, right? I think when it comes to thinking about software development, because I often talk about this, um, we think about software development or it's talked about in a very generic way. All software development teams are the same in the whole world. Yet every organization that has a software team, whether it's a software company or an organization with a software team, there are bottlenecks. It might be code generation. It might not be code generation, right? It might be bug fixing. It might be Jira tickets. It might be validation. So I often say, well, when you go out and look at the software development tools that you could be using, find the tool that actually addresses the bottleneck, right? If no one, I mean, of course, I think code generation is a pretty standard tool and everyone wants a code generation tool. So I think that's kind of gone beyond, that's kind of standard acceptance. But if you're going to make it initiative, make the initiative around where the bottlenecks are in the organization. Because if your bottleneck is validation, why are you going to produce 3 times as much code every week? That's just compounded your bugs and your validation challenges, right? So you have to be thoughtful. It's not to say that code generation isn't worthwhile, but you have to think of it from a system point of view and not break your system, right? Um, so I think that's just another way of thinking about as you go from your individual role to the team's role, if you're helping to guide the team, how you can do that compounded learning, right? Start with validation, get people to see that, learn, and I think limiting the blast radius is also just really super important. Human in the loop accountability. Just to say, I know I want to give other people time to answer the question. The phrase, the AI did it, can never be uttered. AI doesn't do anything. It's not accountable. It's not a conscious being. It has no moral value sense. So it cannot do anything wrong or right. It's humans who either let things go through or through inattention let things go through. So if you make sure that everyone knows that humans are always accountable, then maybe, people will make sure they're always on top of their AI.
Yeah, love it.
But eventually that'll stop. I mean, eventually you can have like you have customer service agents that are online, but those have gone through a lot of due diligence and a lot of guidelines before they're allowed to be released. I've worked on some projects, and when we build customer service agents, only the internal agents can use them because they're being
Hmm.
trained with the internal agents first. And only when the internal agents say thumbs up can it be 24/7 online to handle the easy cases.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. You brought governance into this mix as well. So appreciate it.
Oh, that's an hour-long presentation as well. I didn't even talk about governance. It's its own topic for sure.
All right, so we're 5 minutes over. I think Meenakshi, this was very good. Again, on behalf of Loudoun Agile Network, thank you, Jordan, for joining us today and kicking off the new year. And looking forward to getting your slides so we can share it with everyone. And folks, we did record, and we are going to put it in the land library. So the land library has all the presentations that we've had for the last 6 years. So we will upload that as well. Thank you again, Jordan, on behalf of everybody. And thank you, everybody, for coming on such a beautiful day to join us and be part of our 6th anniversary and our kickoff for 2026. Thank you, everybody. Good night.